So good morning again, everybody. It's our fifth capacity building workshop we are organizing today. And the topic of today is finding the right incentives for the bankability of refurbishment of public buildings. And we present you the SISMA subsidy evaluation tool. The session will last about 2 hours. I would like to present myself very briefly. So my name is Peter Schilken. I will introduce you briefly into the workshop. I'm part of the Efficient Buildings team, and I am involved in the Efficient Buildings community since its very beginning in 2017. We have some partners with us in the workshop. For example, I've seen Eugene from CMCC and also Alison from the project coordinator Nice Metropole. The 6 capacity workshops, the objective is to transfer and to replicate successfully implemented tools which have been developed by the Interreg MET program by modular projects. And we have selected 5 out of 10 tools and projects for replication. And one of these is the SISMA project, and they will present themselves in a few seconds. So welcome, and I warmly encourage you to use this unique opportunity to exchange with the representatives of the SISMA project, get first-hand information and support, and make the best out of the workshop. And now I just say, present you briefly the agenda. So after a welcome through the RP and Golea team from SISMA, it will be Stefano who will present the subsidy evaluation tool. And afterwards, it's Raiko from Golea who will do the training itself. And at 11:30, we will have final round of questions and also a wrap up at the very end. Now I stop my screen sharing and hand over the floor to the SISMA team. I don't know who will do the introduction from you, but please.
Hello, maybe can I start?
Yes, of course.
Susanna speaking. Good morning to all. My name is Susanna Vidmarkovca, and I'm a project manager of SISMA Plus project on Golea. Today with us presenting the SET tool, it's our director, Mr. Raiko Levan, and also technical expert Martin Murovec, who will join later to the Zoom meeting. Just briefly, a few words. We are Goriška Local Energy Agency from Nova Gorica, which has been established in 2006 with the frame of the Intelligent Energy Europe program, and which has supported the establishment of a new local energy agency across whole EU territory. So briefly, our mission is the acceleration of adoption of practices and technologies with a view to achieving a regional energy self-sufficiency. Golea, normally it is a little dissemination regarding the Golea, offers its business partners a comprehensive and qualitative support in action for increasing the energy efficiency and use of renewable energy sources, and as well in the implementation of awareness campaign within the Primorska municipality. As Peter told in the introduction, the project SISMA Plus, it is the continuation of project SISMA. Within the project SISMA, which has been accomplished, we implemented a subsidy evaluation tool methodology, who will be then presented in the continue of the meeting by Raiko. So we wish you a good day and enjoy in the meeting. Thank you very much.
Okay. So is it my turn? Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, thanks. So, well, I'm from APE, FWG, which is also a local regional agency. We, together with Golea, that's, I think it was around 2006 or 7, within the Intelligent Energy Program, were established on both sides of the border. So everything Susanna has already said basically refers to us because let's say we were born together in a certain sense. And since we're an energy agency, obviously we are focused on these kind of topics. So it's greenhouse regarding the building systems. And then obviously we supply support to the local municipalities and public bodies, not only on specific energy projects, but also regarding the policy. And we are working on several European projects. And this is basically our activities. So if you don't mind, I would pass on to the presentation now, since we probably need these extra 10 minutes just to be able to spend a bit of more time on the introduction, if that is okay with Peter and with Susanna.
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, all right then.
It's your workshop, so you
okay, thanks.
start our ceremony.
Okay, right, so okay, just a second, let me start. All right. Okay, so the problem, if you can, let's say, is public funding through subsidies. In other words, being able to, first of all, do you see the presentation?
No.
No. Okay, so it should be just a condividere scale. Just a moment. Sorry. All right. Here it is. Sorry, I missed a step there. Okay. Right. Okay. You see it now?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, let's see if I can come. Okay, that's it. So I said the problem, because it is a problem, is that basically I just need to move this over here. Excellent. Okay. Right. Okay. Sound energy renovations in public buildings are not taking place, right? This is very common. This is very common not only in the southern part of Europe, but also in let's say, in Central Europe. And this is due basically to not only the thing that's done, but the first thing that it's due to is that the savings, to have important savings through energy refurbishing requires a very cold, let's say, environment, very cold winters, a climate where the temperatures are very low, so that, and a very bad starting point, a very bad condition of your building, and a certain geometry of the building. With all these conditions, maybe refurbishing can be, let's say, financially feasible. When I used to go many years ago, we used to travel to Brussels, and there were these interesting presentations on, let's say, success cases. They were always in places like, Latvia or I don't know, some place up in Northern Europe, and usually they were council flats. So basically huge buildings with a very regular form. Let's say Soviet-era constructions, therefore in terrible conditions, where basic interventions on the envelope did yield the expected effects, not only as far as kilowatts per hour, were saved over the time, but also financially. But when you have to pass over to other situations, basically, let's say, Central Southern Europe, then these conditions change. Many buildings are small, many schools aren't that large. Buildings sometimes maybe were built in the 40s, in the 30s, in the 60s. So let's say, the whole environmental condition changes. So at this point, what has been noticed, and this is the reality, is that again, sound renovations are not taking place. Now, this is due to, obviously, the first thing is that there's limited public funding, because obviously if we had enough money to do everything, this would not be a problem. But obviously we do have very strong budget constraints. Even if there's something with new generation Europe, there should be some more, lots more money going around. But anyway, this constraint remains. And then the other fact is that these kind of investments have very long payback periods. It takes a lot of time to get, let's say, your money back, and they have very low internal rates of return. So our approach here, we try to tackle this problem from a different perspective, from a new point of view. The thing was, what do we need? The question is, what do we really need to make things happen? Okay, so this involves another question. The question is project feasibility. What does it revolve around? Well, it revolves around two things, basically: bankability and profitability. In other words, when we carry out a certain let's say that certain ECMs, energy conservation measures, are carried out on a building, let's say external insulation, therefore the envelope, windows replacements, insulation of the roof, and so on. These are the basic things. This obviously costs money, right? This implies a certain amount implies obviously a certain expenditure, and the expenditure usually at the initial period will then yield over the years savings. We will spend less money for the heating, okay? And therefore, what has to be done basically in financial terms is a trade-off between the amount that you have to initially spend in order to carry out, let's say, the investment, and then over a long time, the savings. Okay, basically, it'll be we have to sum up all the discounted amounts of money that we're going to gain over the years and see if it's larger than the initial investment. Okay, so this generates what is called an internal rate of return. In other words, there's an interest rate. Okay, so the first thing here is, which is not so immediate, but we have to try to tune into this kind of approach, is that if somebody out there, an investor, a bank, an ESCO, has money to invest, they usually have a first option. The one option is they can invest in, let's say, public debt. In other words, they lend money to the government with bonds over long periods, sometimes even 15, 20 years, and they get an interest rate. That interest rate is like the benchmark of the whole system when it comes to an investment with a very, very, very low risk. So usually when investing in energy refurbishment of buildings, what people, what ESCOs, what builders want is at least that the minimum, let's say, interest rate they can get from risk-free, like public bonds, plus, let's say, a markup, let's say 2-3% extra, because there's more risk, they have to work, they have to do everything, so obviously they need a high interest rate. Right. The idea, so the philosophy of the subsidy, therefore, is when you have to carry out certain interventions, certain energy conservation measures on a certain building, and this requires a certain investment, the idea is to provide a subsidy, in other words, a grant, capital, money. For example, you have to spend 1 million euros. The subsidy, what should the subsidy sum up to? What should the subsidy be in order to make the investment yield an interest rate which is deemed acceptable by the local operators, because obviously this changes from place to place. So getting into, so as I said, energy, this is just the first general introduction. Now we can get into, I'll go through everything again just to try to make this a bit more hopefully understandable. So energy projects generate different types of cash flows, yeah? So this is a very simple scheme of it. Just a moment, yeah. Okay. Excellent. Okay, let's see if I can see this from I'm trying to get just a moment. Okay, right. So what happens here basically, there's an initial investment, okay, to do, let's say we work on the envelope, let's say the external, so the envelope, roof, and windows, the replacement of the windows, okay, this is also the right philosophy, you know, that's what we should always start from, the envelope, and then in a second, then consider the plants and other things, right? Because obviously the first way to, let's say, to carry out an energy efficiency project on a building is to reduce its consumptions. So you start from the envelope, right? So let's say you consider a certain amount of measures. These measures have require an initial investment. As you can see, it's this red arrow with the minus I0 is the initial investment. Then what do we get? We get over the years, say year 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. These are the cash flows we get. In other words, it's not that we get money, but we are spending less money because obviously the heating the bills will be far much lower. Okay. Why are these arrows? They're not the same sizes. The reason is that basically winters are not always the same. So one year you might save a little bit more. When it's, you know, if it's really cold, you'll be saving more. Next year you'll be saving less. Anyway, these are the annual energy savings you can get. So as I said before, what you have to compare is your initial investment, which is, let's say, a minus a negative sum. You know, let's say you know, you work on a school or on a hospital or something, and you spend, let's say, 500,000 euros. So it's minus 500,000. That's your initial, let's say, investment. And then you have to, and then you have savings, let's say, for 15, 20 years, right? And you have to compare that. You have to basically, all these savings will be discounted at a certain interest rate. And you'll have to sum up all these, and the sum of all these cash flows, discounted cash flows, to, let's say, actualized to today, have to, the sum has to be larger than the initial investment. In this case, it'll be yielding a positive interest. Okay. So basically, the idea here, as I like to show you, is basically, therefore, there are energy costs before we carry out these energy conservation ECMs or energy conservation measures. Then, so this is the initial investment. This is the contractual period. Usually, this is done with an ESCO or with even a builder, as I'll show you later on. But this is done within there's obviously a contract where somebody, in other words, like say a public, like a municipality or a public body, will award a tender, give a grant, a subsidy, and the bidder, which can be an ESCO, an energy performance company, it can be a even a builder. What do? They receive the grant, they receive all the savings for, let's say, 15, 20 years, and in return, they will carry out the measures. You know, they will go in the building and do what has to be done. So basically, there will be, as you can see, energy costs. Obviously, after that, the ECMs have been carried out, energy costs obviously go down. These are the annual cash flow, the savings, which will be awarded to which go to the ESCOs or the service provider. Because obviously, let's say the municipality or hospital or whatever was paying, let's say this amount, the energy costs over here, these are the energy costs. It keeps on paying the same amount, only that all this area, which are the same, which is the amount which is saved, will be passed over to the ESCO. Once the contract has expired, obviously these savings belong to the public body. So this is how the mechanism works. At this point, we can try to I'll try to explain what is the idea behind just the subsidy, what is the economical idea in detail, right, regarding the subsidy. So let's say that you have to carry out, or you wish to carry out, a certain initial investment on a building in order to, as I said before, for a sound refurbishment in terms of energy of the building, right? So it will be, and you'll have an initial investment. The initial investment is this part over here, which is in green, right? So you are going to spend, not you, I mean, the project has a certain cost. And this certain cost will allow the building, will allow the municipality, or the owner, to have, as I said before, all the savings for 20 years. All these savings, and therefore the whole project, initial investment on one hand, all the savings over, let's say, 20 years, you put them together and the whole project yields a certain interest rate. It's like, in a bank, it's like the opposite of a bank loan. Usually you get the money and you pay them back with let's say the monthly payments for your loan for a certain period. And here it's the opposite way around. You make the investment and you get all the savings. This yields a certain interest rate, which is this one over here, as I pointed this out. This is IRR, internal rate of return, and this is the investment. So this is my initial condition, right? I want to carry out an installation of the external walls, the roof, and I want to change the windows. Excellent. This is a certain cost. I will save a certain amount of money over, let's say, 20, 25 years, and this will give me a certain interest rate. Now, what happens? Say that this, let's call this an operation, this kind of financial operation, which is not a financial operation, it's a physical energy refurbishing, but the financial part of it, going through the figures, with a simple Excel file, we find out that this is your interest rate over here, the green one. Now you have to compare this to what? To this blue one here. Sorry, I'm trying to use this. Okay, here we go. This part over here, the blue one, or better with a red dotted line over here. You see this? What is this internal rate? This is the internal rate. The internal rate which is required by the market for an investment similar to the one we are considering, similar in the sense of the risk this implies. In other words, as I said before, and this is done basically, this is one of the difficult parts of the whole SISMA model, is that you have to have an idea of what the minimum internal rate of return required, basically by banks, by financing institutions in your area, deem suitable for certain kind of projects. In other words, how do you get this? How do you find out what this value is? What do banks, basically, how much money? What is the interest rate that banks require for investments in order to provide finance in subsidies to enable companies, ESCOs, to borrow money from the banks? The banks require a certain interest rate. So what is this interest rate? This depends obviously on your local situation, but obviously you have to bear in mind that these kind of projects, in other words, they are done by public bodies. They are done through tenders. If the work is done correctly by the bidders, by the ESCOs, by the builders, by whoever, the money is, let's say, the risk is very low. The real risk is that you won a tender, let's say a company is awarded a tender, and then the company is not able to do the job correctly, or other kind of problems. But basically, this is a very low risk situation. So usually, for example, what we do, getting to concrete things, is basically we have a couple of informal contacts and chats with with like 3-4 local banks, branches of big banks, or even local, smaller local banks. Excuse me. And he said, what is the interest rate you require when a company has to carry out an investment, a deep energy refurbishment investment, let's say for a public building, through a grant, which is awarded by, again, a public body or by a municipality. This was we did this 2 years ago, and it was, if the project is rather large, they said it was about 4.5%, because, interest rates are very low down all over Europe. So basically, what does this mean? That, for example, the minimum internal rate of return required by the market could be around 4.5%, 5%. But if the project, the investment I have to carry out on one hand, and all the savings I will get on the other hand, will only make me yield, let's say, an interest rate which is, as you can see over here, lower than this is the minimum required by the market, and this is lower, as you can see. But what does this mean? That nobody will do it. That's why things are not working, because operators on one hand, banks on the others, financial institutions on the others, nobody is willing to give, let's say, to borrow money to someone, or even other operators are not willing, even if they have their own money, they are not willing to carry out a project that yields an interest rate which is lower than what is deemed the average, or better, the minimum for this kind of investment. So basically, the idea over here, and this is where the subsidy comes in, is, okay, so what do we have to do now? We have to give, what do they need? Is a subsidy, a grant. They need money. In other words, if your initial investment is this level over here, the green line, and with this initial investment, you can have a certain amount of savings. The savings derive from a physical intervention. I've changed, let's say we've changed, all the windows. We've isolated, there's been installation of the external, of the envelope of the building, the roof and the walls. So these are physical interventions, and they will cause lower physical consumptions of energy, which will mean lower costs. So this is something, once you've done that, you cannot control it anymore. If it's done properly, it goes on by itself. The only thing you can do is, so you can't work on the savings. What you can do, you can work on the initial investment required. So basically, the cost, the expenditure of the investment has to be lower. As you can see here, we have to take it down from this level to this level. In other words, it's like saying, if in order to have the same savings, the investment should go down, let's say from the green line to the red line. In fact, as you can see, this red line implies automatically that the operation will have an internal rate of return, which is the one deemed the minimum one required by the market. So basically is, if, for example, the investment costs 1 million euros, and with 1 million euros, I will be making 2.5% interest rate, net internal rate of return, right? That's what the investment yields. but the market requires, let's say, 5%. The subsidy says, and the subsidy is, let's say, 300,000 euros. What does that mean? That means that you have to spend, and if you have to have it, you have to spend not 1 million. You have to spend 700,000 euros. In other words, 1 million minus 300,000 euros, which are the subsidy. So spending 700,000 euros on one hand and keeping all the savings. Obviously, the savings remain the same. The project on the whole will yield an internal rate of return which is equal to the one required by the market. So this means that if a public body, a municipality, in other words, says, they prepare a tender and they say, okay, we want to do this with all the technical requirements. They say exactly what they want, everything. Once this has been defined, they will also have to say, there's a subsidy. The subsidy is 300,000 euros. So let's say a builder, an independent builder, an ESCO, a company, can make a bid, an offer, participate to the tender and say, all right, if you win the tender, you will get 300,000 euros as a lump sum, as a grant, as a subsidy, and then you will keep all the savings for 20 years, 25 years. So as I showed before, all the costs for the public body obviously remain the same, but the public body or the municipality has refurbished completely its building, and the ESCO has got a subsidy plus the savings in order to have the minimum internal rate. The interesting thing about this is also another thing, that it's not something immediate, but if you think about it, usually when it comes to subsidies, when it comes to grants, what do? Usually they work on flat rates, which are very high, or usually they will give you 100%. But sometimes, as you can see over here, they even there's an excess of funding. In other words, with this system, maybe a subsidy of 60% is enough to make the whole thing work. So there's no need to give 100%. In other words, if you have 100, right? Let's say you have 100 million euros, I want to exaggerate. Instead of, just going through 100% subsidy grants, you can say, okay, I will give you only 60 for this project because with 60% you can reach the minimum internal rate. And then I've got extra 40, which I could invest in other projects. In other words, this system also allows to maximize the intervention and therefore the capacity for public bodies to maximize the positive effects stemming from public funding. Okay, now. I think that this is what I really, really wanted to point out. And right, this is rather quick. I'll go through the technical stuff rather quick now before passing on to the presentation to the tool itself. Because the Excel tool, as you will see, works, I hope, rather well, because it really gives you because then, it's easy, but then what is needed is a tool that can provide you with a figure. In other words, if I want to do a certain kind of interventions, how much will it cost me? And what should the subsidy be? I need a figure. If the cost of 200,000 euros, how much must the subsidy be? Let's say 40,000, 60,000, it doesn't matter, but I need a tool that can give me an idea. Like theoretically, if this is theoretically, right, this is to make the whole system work, what is needed basically is that to make a project bankable, we need to standardize all the processes. In other words, the investor needs to be assured that on the technical side things have been worked out, and that the whole process and therefore also the tendering process and the technical requirements are precise and standard as possible, right? Because, you know, public bodies, you know, want, again, let's say, investors, public body, they all want to keep risks very low, okay? So here are the phases of the process. This is very quick, we'll go through this just to have an idea. So you have the baselining, in other words, you try to understand how the building works and what are the major consumption issues. Then savings calculation, then there should be a design, construction verification, therefore the blueprints and, you know, how and all the technical details. Then there's maintenance. You should also have a way, maintenance should be programmed, because an investor wants to be sure that the savings will continue over time and that there won't be problems. And then there's another thing, that's measurement and verification. In other words, it's a third party, because on one side, there's a public authority, school, municipality. On the other side, there's a private company, an ESCO, and the savings which are generated each year have to be verified by someone who is a third party to both, okay, just to have everything. And this is the whole vision of the whole project over its life cycle. Now, these are the 5 major requirements. So I won't go through it. This is just for, you can keep this for your, if you want to have some extra details. So I won't go through all this, we won't read this stuff, but basically, as I said before, there has to be, you know, bankability. That means that the project has to yield an interest rate which is similar. It should reach the minimum interest rate which is required. Then the other good thing is that this enables public funding optimization, which I said before. So we will not be giving out subsidies on a flat rate base, on a flat rate basis, or just, you know, maybe 100%, as often happens, but every case can be analyzed, and in this way we can really maximize the number of interventions you can make. Then we need a sound technical framework covering the whole project life cycle, as I said before. So starting from the baselining, ending with the measurement and verification of the savings, so that investors on one side, public authorities on the other, you know, and this means that there has to be someone who's going to design, make the blueprints, all the technical construction details and so on. And obviously, the system works well if it's easy to participate to the tender, and if it's easy to award the tender. Because in this case, and this is interesting, this is the next, okay, these are the milestones of the phase. In other words, with the Excel tool, we work out the subsidy. What do we do next? Because I've spoken a lot, but now let's try to get a short, quick presentation of how the whole system should work. So first, you work out the tender, you work out the subsidy with the tool, and this can be done by let's say by the public authorities or the municipality on their own. The tool has been, as I'll show you, has been. We tried to make a tool which was very simple. You don't have to have, you know, a great technical capacity to use it, right? That's the first thing. Then this is ICP, investor confidence protocols. This is tender 1. There will be a first tender, which, what is this? It will be, I call this tender 1. In other words, this tender is needed to get the technical documentation. So that means the design, the blueprints, all the details on how all the material and construction details and so on. Why is this very important? Because once we've got this, the bidders, the companies, the people, you know, that are interested in this, they don't have to, it's easy for them to work out an offer because they're going to go basically online on let's say on the platform or on the website. They're going to download the whole technical documentation where everything is specified. So we're going to need, for example, 5,000 square meters of for the installation of the external walls with this kind of thickness, with this kind of material, with this kind of technical characteristics. We're going to change the whole glazing system. Okay, so the windows have to be, this is the area, double glazing, and so on. So we'll have everything has to be, because this nonetheless has to be done anyway. And then once you've got all the technical documentation ready, what do you need? Basically, all the tenders, this is, energy conservation measures, they have to be carried out. And this is very easy because the companies that are participating to this, as I said before, will have all the documentation downloaded from everything has been defined. So basically, the participation is very easy. What is needed here is you have to prove all those technical administrative aspects. You have to prove that you're capable of doing it, that you have, that your organization can do this. But besides that, at the end of the day, it'll be a discount on savings. Like the savings are a certain amount for 20 years, and the company that offers the bid with the lowest, let's say, discount on the savings is the company that will be awarded, basically. So this means that the awarding process is easy for both the public body, but also for the participants, because all the bidders will have basically all the information they need. They don't have to, theoretically, they don't even need to go and check the venue, because they'll have everything. All the quantitative documentation they need will be detailed, because we've done this in the first tender, right? So basically, all they have to do is work out what their costs are and see if, on the one hand, the expenditures they have to, the cost of the investments on one hand for the bidder, and subsidy plus all the savings on the other, they can work out if it's convenient for them enough, and eventually at the end what kind of discount they can apply. So I'll skip this because okay, I think that this is enough. I hope it's a bit complex, but I hope that I've been able somehow to give it just a, let's say, what is the theoretical approach. I think that we can pass on to the the moment. I think we can pass on to the tool now, which is the interesting part. Okay, just a moment. I'm trying to open the other file. Okay. Okay. Right. So, do you see it? Can you hear me? Is
yes, yes, we see and can hear you.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
Stefanos.
Okay. Okay. So, okay. Now, first, we've just seen what the subsidy is about, basically. So, I want to repeat myself once more. I'm sorry, but so the subsidy basically is the amount of money which is needed in order to make a certain investment yield an interest rate. In other words, the savings this investment yields on one hand, compared to the amount of money we have to spend to carry out these energy conservation measures, will enable the whole project to give an interest rate which reaches the minimum which is required. In other words, if let's say in ESCO, all these companies often borrow money from banks, so they will go to the bank, and the bank will say, okay, so what do you want to do? I want to participate to this bid very well, and how much? And they say, well, what are your? Show me your figures, your financial figures. So let's say the ESCO, the company will say, even a building company, because the good thing about this is you don't have to be an ESCO, you can even be a building company, because you have to be able to do these measures. If you've got the, if you're able to do it because it's your building, you're a building company, it's okay. You go to a bank, you borrow the money, you do the whole thing. You get, on the other hand, you get a subsidy, and then for 20 years you get all these savings. That means money, and with that you pay the loan back to the bank, and obviously have to make a certain margin for yourself as a company. So the bank wants to see the figures, and that's why the subsidy has to be big enough to put the company that's applying for a loan in the condition to have a decent or better an internal rate of return which is more or less equal or aligned with the one required by the market for operations that have this kind of, let's say, risk-reward profile. So the question is, okay, this is theoretically it's let's say it can even be interesting, but the question is, when I get down to earth, how do I do this? Because let's say that there's a public body that owns, that runs, that manages 15, 20, 5 to 1 schools, for example, and they are interested, they like to do it, but they don't know how. They say, okay, this is nice, but how do we do this? Okay, so this is the tool. All right, now. And I think the best way is just to show you how it works. Now, basically, you can select 7 languages, right? We'll do it obviously in English. So you start selecting the language, and then you pass on to, now an interesting thing is, this is open for all of you, but the users, the end users, let's say the technical office of a municipality, what they see and what they use are only the green sheets, the ones, okay, from 1 to 7. All the rest, they don't see them, and they can't access them, and they can't use them. Okay, so what do we need to do? Well, first of all, you write in the basic information regarding the building. Okay, so kind of building, public school, whatever, the address, the owner, and so on. And then you start filling in some information on the building. So I wrote Udine because that's where we are based, and like you can choose, these are the buildings we have: a school, a gym, offices, and healthcare structure. Let's say we choose a school, okay? The position then, if it's a building, isolated means it stands alone with all 4 of the walls exposed, or it can be semi-detached, or both sides semi-detached. It can be semi-detached, it can be closed within 2 buildings and so on. So you start, pointing out basic stuff. The type of building, if it's, let's say, an isolated building, and then you select the latitude. This is for the heating degree days. So, and where it's positioned, and for the heat, for the also the influence of the sun. Okay, once you've done this, what do you need? You need your heating degree days, and this is, I mean, depending on when you are, this is a kind of this data is, everybody's got it. It's not difficult. You need the construction year of the building. You need what is needed is the net internal area, or if you don't have that, you can use, as an alternative, the gross floor area, and then the medium thickness of walls. This is optional. The heated volume, and the numbers of floors with heating. So now, basically here, what are we doing? We are saying, this is the building, this is how it's positioned, these are the heating degree days, And we'll provide information on what the area is and the number of floors. With this basic data, in the parameters in this part, which I will not go through this, but it has, you can go through it if you're interested in, because obviously this you can keep this, obviously you can download the file. We have worked out a standard average building, okay? But this does not mean that if you have, and this I will show you later on, if you have more precise information, you can, let's say, improve. Otherwise, if you have only this information or you don't have the time, because you have to go through, you have to analyze, let's say, 20 buildings, and you cannot afford paying a long visit to every single building, going to every building, or it's difficult to get certain information. Nonetheless, you can use this. I also wish to say that we've tested this because we also, obviously, as an agency, we do obviously carry out energy audits. So we did an energy audit for 20 schools, or not only schools, but public buildings. And then we tested the tool and we made a comparison with, in other words, what the real buildings are, what the real consumptions are, and so on. And it was, this tool was rather precise at the end. Obviously, it cannot be exact, but it was, the preciseness was around 80%, which is very good, because obviously, as I will show you this, as you can see, this is basic, this is quick, this helps you identify, let's say, if you want to, then you want to carry out an energy audit, but you cannot do it on 20 buildings. You can first use the tool, identify, let's say, the 5 buildings that have the most promising results. In other words, require the lowest subsidy, and then on these you can go into deep analysis. So as I said, once you put in this basic data on the building, then you pass on to the consumption data. So you have, for example, you can have, in this system we have two kinds of up to 2 kinds of heating boilers or whatever are considered. Usually there's one big centralized one, but this system is prepared for 2, so you can even consider an extra one if needed, if it's in the building. So you can choose, for example, here you have all the kind of fuels, let's say natural gas, which is the one we most use over here. Then the unit of measurement, which is standard meter in cubic meters. And you therefore have the heating consumption. Where do you get this information from? From your bills, basically. So what you need here is bills, but everybody pays, I hope, the energy bills. It's a bit of an effort, but not too much. So you can usually get this information from the, let's say, the accountancy office, and usually, let's say, these are just figures I've put in, right? The year and the annual expense. You get these from the bills. So now you're starting to work out very basic stuff, basic information. Just a thing I'd like to point out, but I don't want to spend too much time on this. The unit of measurement, if the bill regards national gas and comes in standard cubic meters, you select cubic meters, okay? Everything can be also expressed in kilowatts hour, okay? But as you can see, look at the figures, 21,000, 22,400. If I shift, they stay the same. In other words, you should please choose the unit of measurement that you have on your bill. You can express it also in kilowatts, as I said, but in this case, you have to go in here and write out the equivalent. In other words, if I have, let's say, from the bill, 21,000 standard cubic meters of natural gas, and I want to shift to kilowatts, I will have to write here, I have to add, I know that 1 kilowatt is equal to more or less, sorry, one cubic meter is equal to 10 kilowatts. If I want to put in kilowatts, I can do it, but I'll have to add, for example, a 0 here, okay? It will be 210,000. Okay. Anyway, the rule when it comes to using this basically is fill in the unit of measure that is on the invoice, on the bill of your provider of the fuel, okay? And then energy measures regarding electricity. So this is the electrical consumption, also this from the invoice and from the bill. So as you can see, this is very, very basic information. But at this point, what we've got is, we know the type of building, okay? Is it a school? Is it a hospital? Is it offices? We know the year of construction, and therefore we have standard kind of data regarding, you know, how the buildings in that area were built. We know the area, we know the heated volume, and we know how many floors it has. So we have the geometry, the basic geometry. We have what the consumptions are when it comes to thermal energy, and what the consumptions are when it comes to energy. So at this point, we can logically pass on to the third phase. In other words, what do we do here? These are a set of options, right? This is, sorry, let me get on, this is prepared. Okay. Now, you see? Oh yeah, by the way, at this point, you have to choose between what kind of option. What are the two options? Option A is simplified option. Option B means that well, in this case, you've already done an energy audit of the building. You know what you want, and you've measured everything, and you've made your calculations. So you skip option A, and you pass on straight on to option B, and you fill in option B with this data, basic data over here, okay? Because you have it. But we're not interested in that at the present moment. What we're interested in is option A, because as I said, we want to make a simplified estimation of the savings that derive from certain energy conservation measures, okay? In other words, what do we want to do? So usually, what we consider really is, and you can see them like external wall installations, you know, so you go here and you say, I want to do it or I don't want to do it, right? So let's say you select it, you can deselect it, or you can select it. So you select it in this way, it's very simple. And then you see this number over here, this is the affected dispersion surface, the area of the external installation. Now, first question, why do I have to write in a figure if before, over here, right, I've filled in all the major information on the building and I have a standard geometrical surface? Because if you don't fill anything in here, it's not that thing, it'll automatically use the one provided as a standard, but I can write, if I have if instead I'm lucky enough to have a precise measure on a certain, like a certain surface, I know it because I have a blueprint, because I've done some kind of work in it. In other words, I know that figure. Well, you can write it down. If you write it down, this will make the whole thing more accurate. You don't have to do it, but it'll help. So let's say that let's go through the basic stuff. You choose to carry out the installation of the external roof of the walls, the roof, okay, and then the replacement of windows, right? These are, for example, the kind of interventions. This is also being specified in the user's manual. These are the most important. It's like this is really a philosophy. This is the starting point. You always start from the envelope. Okay, you don't, when you move, when you skip all this and you start, you know, it's photovoltaic, it's new plants, it's stuff like that. let's say it's not really the best way to do things, right? So especially when it comes as public bodies, this should be stressed. Not only, but then I'll show you later on that this is also the easiest. It's also easy to work with a file because you can know the cost or standard on these. Okay. Anyway, so you choose the interventions you want to carry out. Boiler replacement, I can choose it or I cannot choose it, right? We can change the valves, replacement of lamps, whatever. You have all these nice options which cover basically the major possible interventions, and there's the other one which is called other. When you see other, this means that you cannot, if you select other, for example, you say, sorry, and there are two options. So you carry out something which is not foreseen in the list above, something very peculiar. Let's say something that depends on the way the building is managed, the way you put on sensors, other stuff, but that has an impact on the savings. You will have to write down a figure. Let's say you have to work out this calculation separately, and then in this, say, it'll give me, for example, a 10% savings on thermal, and the other one is for the electricity. And if it also has an impact on electricity, say 5%, and that's it. By the way, you see, select the energy measure. What does this mean? That if you put in a value here, there's a pop-up that says, hey, you've got to tick this box as well. Okay. So these are the measures we've considered. And as you can see, we get a estimated savings on heat consumption, and estimated savings on the electric power. So basically here, carrying out all these interventions, okay, selecting the ones we wish to carry out, we wish to consider. Usually the major ones are envelope and standard stuff like the valves of the thermostatic valves, and maybe replacement of lamps. So this says, okay, now this is the amount of energy in percentage that will be saved. This, and the distinction between heat and electricity. And this is the amount of euros per year. So now we've got the savings, okay? So, page 4. So now we know what we want to do, and all the interventions we have will show the estimated cost, right? You see, these are the costs, because after we've chosen, for example, external installation of walls. This was okay. As you can see, they were chosen here and here, and they were ticked. Roof insulation and replacements of windows. When you go over here, these are the costs. How do we know the cost? Because there's a thing called price list. There's a sheet. This is done by the public bodies because they know what the price is for the external insulation, internal insulation, roof insulation, the cost of everything per square meter. So the system basically it makes a multiplication of the price per square meter, and it gives you the estimated cost. So as you can see, it's very basic and it's logical. So you first put in the data, basic data on the building, then you choose the kind of intervention you want. Then what do you get? You get the costs. These costs, you add building security costs, and you add that, and you get the total amount of money that you need in order to carry out this kind of investment. Okay, so okay, what is missing? The subsidy. Where is the subsidy? The subsidy comes page 5, because now we know that, for example, in this case, This investment will cost us 297,000. This will yield 7,000 euros a year in heat consumption savings and electricity. Total savings 7,000. As you can see, they're not big numbers compared to investments. And if the financial plan has to last 20 years, the general inflation rate can be even 1.5%, for example. And this is the general one. This is the one for electricity prices. We can keep it at, let's say, 1.5 because the inflation rates. Okay. Of the other heating energy sources, this is the discount rate. The amount, the interest rate we use to discount all the cash flows coming from the savings. And then this over here is the internal rate of return, the minimum amount which is deemed, which is required by the market for this kind of investment. Let's say let's put it 4%. Okay. As you can see, the subsidy goes up. In other words, if the minimum interest rate is, let's say, 3.5%, because interest rates are very low, the risk is very low. This is a general condition. The subsidy needed here in order to make this whole project, this kind of intervention, yield this is 175%. If the interest rate goes up, what does that mean? The subsidy has to go up because you have to spend less in order to gain more. So let's say 4%. As you can see, 181,000, equivalent to 61%. If it's only 3.5%, for example, it's 59% and 175,000. So this is, now as you can see, this, and then this is interesting because what does this mean? This means that, for example, if you, a public authority, a municipality has 10 buildings, you open 10 Excel files, for example, right? And you say, okay, I want to carry out. So you fill in the basic data of the 10 buildings. Okay, so internal area, heated volume, number of floors, this stuff here, the basic stuff. You don't even go there and make measurements. You keep it really simple. Part two, you consider, in this case, what I would do is consider only external insulation, roof insulation, replacement of windows, and all right, thermostatic valves, okay, replacement of lamps. Lighting system efficiency, I'll take this, you can take this, for example, this is a bit complicated. Photovoltaic installation, okay, you can consider to put a bit of PV on the building. Okay, you take this away. Okay, and you take this away as well. Now, what do you get? You will get a certain subsidy. So what you can do here, you can consider the subsidy needed for 10 buildings, sorry, 10, in order to grant you this internal rate of return. Subsidies will change. This is fixed. Every project has to yield, has to give, has to provide 3.5%. Okay, compared. So what will change is the subsidy. So you can start to make a ranking of a subsidy, or for example, you can say this subsidy here is 163,000 euros. Say you get 1 million euros from a national authority to do this, you will start working out a list. In other words, not a list. You'll start making like you have to rank what are the most convenient interventions. In other words, which buildings yield or enable to have to maximize the saving of energy and the lowest, and to maximize the investment. So what I'd like to point out, here is that, for example, this is a way in which you can start to analyze different buildings in a rather quick way. If you have lots of buildings and you don't have lots of money and you have to make a choice, you can start, this is the first estimation. Once you've done this, you can pass on to an energy audit and go into deep analysis. But this enables you not to carry out, say, 20, 25, or 30 analysis, but only if you can only afford 10 or 5, you will first work out and find, you know, and select the right project, the right building in this case. Another thing, this is just a final aspect, and now, and this I'll leave the floor to Raiko and Golea. This point 8 is company so this is where basically the public part stops, the public authority stops. They say, okay, this is what I want to do, this is the cost, this is the subsidy, and I can start making out I can carry out a sound analysis with this. This instead can be, it's interesting because this regards the company financial data, right? So the company has to fill in, because obviously this whole thing, this operation, this intervention costs 290,000, nearly 300,000 euros, okay, 297,000, and the subsidy is 163. So the remaining part can be done. You can fill in. You can ask a loan in order to cover everything. You can put, the company can put a part in own capital and a part in with a loan. And since it's filled in all the data here, you get what the there's the VAT bridge, but this is just a special loan for the VAT technical figure. I wouldn't go through it right now. Basically, this enables the company, now we can't see this very well, to see what the cash flows will be, and if it's to carry out a first kind of a financial analysis. But this can also be important for us because us, when I say us, I intend the public authority who's in charge of carrying out the policy. This can be interesting for us because we also know on average what the loan amount is required. Basically, like in Italy, let's say it's declared that usually 60% of these operations, the private, I mean the ESCOs, the building companies, they will ask a loan. The loan will cover 60%. So if the cost is 100, it'll be 100 minus the subsidy. Let's say the subsidy is 30. Okay, you get 70. Of that 70 that is needed, they will get 60% will be provided. Let's say usually average market by the loan. The period of the loan is, let's say, 20 years. The annual interest rate required, okay, for this is, let's say 4%. That's what's required. Okay. Then when I pass on to this, I will find what the cash flows are, and I'll have an insight on the financial sustainability of this. Now, one could say, but who cares about this? No, this is interesting because this enables, at a policy level, to put together, on the one hand, the subsidy amount, and on the other hand, not only do I work out what the subsidy should be, but I can make a general simulation to see if combining the subsidy with what the loan, the amount of money companies averagely borrow from banks and the cost of the interest rates required by these loans, if the cash flows that will be generated are okay and make this project financially sustainable. So, and this can be used for a general policy, which is good, and can also be used, and which is explained in the tender, by the companies themselves for a quick check. So I'd say this is the whole tool. I think that's enough because otherwise it will be too much in such a little time. And well, please, you know, if you have any questions or whatever, don't hesitate. Okay. So Peter, I think that well, I can pass on to Raiko.
I think it's good to if you pass the floor to Raiko. Yeah, and still we can offer participants to write questions in the chat room, and yeah, I hope we will have some time.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but it's a bit complex, as you can see.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Okay, so let's continue with Raiko.
Thank you very much. Maybe my English is not so good as Stefano, and so I maybe be a little bit shorter. Good morning, everybody. I would like to welcome you on behalf of Gorishka Local Energy Agency, Gulea. Gulea is an energy manager in 22 Primorska region municipalities in western part of Slovenia. So our neighbors energy agency in Italy is APE, from which also comes colleague Stefano, who presented us very clearly the SISMA SET subsidy evaluation tool, the new version of this tool upgraded by SISMA Plus project. Local energy agencies are facilitators of energy efficient project and play very important role as shown in the picture. You can see in the picture at the beginning of public-private partnership, we should have independent investment documentation based on real data. Also, Stefano said something about this, about baseline and so on. In this financial perspective, Slovenia has allocated 415 million euros for the renovation of buildings. Due to the lack of public money, the activation of private capital through energy performance contracting is required. ESCO, Energy Service Company, must invest more than half of the funds that we are talking about the public-private partnership, and what does not go into borrowing. Borrowing is very important thing when we're talking about energy performance contracting. An important contribution to the implementation of pilot project has given us international project funded by EU. From the implementation of the energy performance contracting in Slovenia, the project Marie on program Mediterranean is very important. We have implemented and executed pilot activity in administrative office building at municipality of Brda, very close to border Italy. When we have included also primary school Dobrova and Kojsko, we have had big potential for energy savings. Due to this, also big motivation for ESCO. In case of Brda, we combined the saving in 3 buildings. Pilot project on the EPC in Brda also served as base for the preparation of the national guidelines for energy contracting in 2015. It's very important that contractor guarantees energy savings until end of the contract period, in this case 15 years. Guaranteed savings, the contractor and the municipality shared 90-10. Stefano before show us that 100% go to ESCO to pay back the investment, but in this case we shared 90 ESCO, 10 municipality. The excess savings is shared 50-50. If the contractor does not meet the guaranteed savings, it's charged to the contractor and pay penalty. Following the pilot project in Brda and national guidelines, many energy performance contracting projects were carried out in Slovenia. You can see on the picture where municipalities are overtaking the center government in the energy renovation of public buildings. You know that EU directive said that government should do this and this, but in Slovenia, municipalities are overtaking the government. In 2014 to 2015, there was no call. You can see on the left side, and no renovations. And then they started again on the basis of the new guidelines. I talked before about these guidelines. And this is joint analysis of calls and public tenders of Ministry of Infrastructure. And this showed us that in the years 2016 to 2018, renovated for more than 600,000 square meters of public buildings. As much as 76% of this is in the form of public-private partnership energy performance contracting, where the eligible costs were more than 100 million euros. Average saving are 86 kilowatt-hour per square meter per year, and public-private partnership, and only 68 kilowatt-hour per square meter per year at public procurement. At eligible cost is lower at public-private partnership, only 170 euro per square meter, and on public procurement more than 225. So private investments are also more efficient than public ones, and this is also the point of energy performance contracting. The graph showing the required procedure in Slovenia, where the public-private partnership facility study is necessary. This is necessary. At the beginning, we use the SISMA tool for a quick project feasibility test, as showed before Stefano, where public cohesion fund amount to 49%, and the contribution of a private partner 51%, more than half. If the result with the SISMA SET tool, this was option A, on the basis of the data of the building shows the feasibility of the project, we go to make a detailed energy audit. And then we come to the first step in this graph. Then use the SISMA SET tool, option B, and if the result is favorable, we go to the call to the promoters. Depending on the result of public-private partnership feasibility study, we go forward on PP precision or PP precision. PP, public-private partnership precision, then prepare PP Act, investment documentation, and so on, and finally apply to cohesion fund. Or if not, then it's standard public procurement precision, project documentation, investment documentation, public procurement, and then also go to apply to the cohesion. One of our examples of good practice is the deep energy renovation of the primary school and heat center in Idria. We published a new public tender in July 2018. We conducted the competitive dialogue in October 2018 and obtained a co-financing agreement in November from Ministry of Infrastructure. The ESCO completed all work in November 2019, so the energy contracting service started with the 1st January 2020. We used the SISMA SET tool in some phases of the investment project, option A at the beginning and option B after an energy audit. Our last case, at the secondary school center in Nova Gorica, we considered 4 deep energy renovation buildings, but the calculations did not indicate that the project could be interested for ESCO. So we have added 50 buildings with interesting measures for ESCO with short payback period, and the project is now moving behind to energy performance contracting the project become bankable. So this upgraded was done by energy project. So we can combine also more buildings and get the critical mass for private investors. We also applied for Elena technical assistant for the preparation of project, where we had to unit many small municipalities in order to achieve a successful investment plan in value of 45 million euros. We obtained 2.25 million in technical assistance for 26 municipalities, where the co-financing of European Investment Bank amount to 90% to prepare more than 15 million investments. And the most investments were on the buildings. The total energy savings amount to 22 gigawatt-hour per year, or 8,172 tons CO2 emission per year. Fossil fuels were replaced by renewable energy sources by 13 gigawatt-hours per year, and 77 buildings with a floor area 130,000 447 square meters were renovated with 33 projects. This is combination of buildings, more buildings in one project, due to find the right combination of measures and target internal rate of return. We use the SISMA SET tool in some phases of the investment. As I said, option A at the beginning, option B after the energy audit. So let's go to the SISMA SET subsidy evaluation tool. Stefano showed us very clear Excel file. So I maybe say something about the results. The first practical example of using the SISMA SET tool is the implementation of quick feasibility test for the renovation of the municipal administration building in Sežana. Previously, we conducted a one-day audit of the building and collected data of the building, use of energy sources, collected the bills, and so we get the data and enter this data in the field, marked in the red on the presentation, as before showed Stefano. Then we estimated the values of energy efficiency measures. This is the old one version, so we should put the investment into the field, but Stefano before presented us the new version. In the background is also the standard price for example, square meter of new isolation and facade. So it's more simplified for users. And we entered the data in the fields, also marked red, and then go forward. Since we do not yet have a detailed energy audit, selection option A, as showed Stefano, and enter the data in the field option A in red, you can see on the presentation. But in this case, we subsequently made also a detailed energy audit later. So they were able to browse the result of the energy audit entered into the SISMA SET tool. Option B also is filled. As you can see, the results are similar. So this confirming that the tool is suitable for simplified project feasibility tests. Here you can see the results of both options, and it's similar results. So the SISMA SET tool works. This is, data of inflation discount rates were obtained from the Institute for Macroeconomic Analysis and Development of the Republic of Slovenia. We considered internal rate of return of 7%. This is in Slovenia in case of public-private partnership, in case of energy performance contracting. This data on taxes are entered for each country because they are not the same everywhere, you know, and so this for each country fill on the Excel. So this is the results, and as you can see, with 49% co-financing from cohesion funds, cash flow is positive. When we look for the target values, we go back to the sheet 3 and change the measures. Sometimes if we don't get the goal, the positive cash flow, go back to the sheet 3 and then maybe combine some measures as did Stefano before, added photovoltaic, for example, and then better results is coming. If I show this picture, Stefano, from Stefano presentation, with combination of measures, we look for the point of the target internal rate of return. When we get the financial results on the project in page on sheet 6, where we get answer on the question, is the project bankable? We go back to the page 3 on list of measures. We can also facilitate this and look for a more interesting combination for ESCO. After that, we offer in a call to promoters. So what we are doing in Slovenia, the subsidy is now fixed 49%. And now we calibrated measures to get internal rate of return 7% and combine with measures. You know that municipality like to do scan measures, but ESCO like to do only measures with very slow payback period. So this is maybe the first combination that we get that we identify the project and then go to call to the promoters and forward us to the precision as I saw before. The second practical example of using the SISMA tool is the implementation of a feasibility test for the renovation of head center Idria. Previously, we had a detailed energy audit. We enter the data in the fields from the detailed energy audit. In the red is all this data. Also, values are taken from a detailed energy audit and entered the data in the fields in red. Also, the same in next sheet. And also, as I said before, data of inflation discount rates were obtained from the Institute for Macroeconomic Analysis and Development of the Republic of Slovenia. We consider internal rate of return 7%, the case of public-private partnership, energy performance contracting. And here also is the results. As you can see, with 49% co-financing from cohesion funds, cash flow is positive, so the project is bankable. maybe for in the end, we are in front of the great challenges, the energy transition. We are gradually moving from fossil, centralized, polluting energy to renewable, decentralized, and environmentally friendly energy. But only with cooperation, knowledge transfer, we will be able to cope with these tasks. For the future additional question, you also have our contacts. Colleague Martin is an economist and is specialized in the economic part of the tool. So you can also send a question by mail. Previously, I start here with showing the example in Excel, but I think that Stefano very clear explained the tool in Excel. So I would like to thank you for your attention and for giving to Golea an opportunity to present our implementation of SISMA SET tool and our best practice. We are looking forward to future EU project, which will be enabled to us to continue our work and develop new ideas. So I think that now the floor is to Peter, and then maybe some questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Raiko, and also Stefano. So for your very, very detailed presentation of the tool. I understand that's really not such or it is a very complex matter, but you at the end tried to develop a simple tool and which allows us to make refurbishment projects bankable. That's definitely a very interesting and quite, for me, innovative process. So yeah, I think we all need some time to digest, and maybe I use the time you prepare your questions you might have to copy the link of the of the survey, but I see that it's not working into the chat, but this needs some time. So this is a link, so I kindly ask you to complete the survey because we need your input to improve the workshops. Yeah, so you can also stop sharing your screen. Thank you. Maybe I do some summarizing, and then if there's any question, you are more than welcome to ask the question directly. So as I said, very complex matter, but a very didactic presentation from Stefano. It's really amazing how detailed and how sophisticated you have explained us the issue, the challenge. And yeah, it's very interesting to see that there's the other way around of thinking to see what amount of subsidy is needed to make projects bankable, and so to make the best use of publicly available money or EU money or national money or whatever, where's the money coming from, to have the best output and the biggest impact on refurbishment of public buildings. So it's also nice to see that Galileo has made a lot of use of the tool already in using or setting up projects or implementing some good projects. So that's definitely a good choice, and it's worth to be tested also by other cities and implemented in the Mediterranean Union. So maybe also you can give us one of you a short info in which languages the tool is available, and if we want to use it in other cities, if there are any adaptations to be done. So can somebody of you reply on this?
Yeah. Well, it's available in, I think, 7 languages. The updated version is, let's say, it's in Slovenian, Croatian, I think, Italian, and it'll be in Portuguese and in English. For the versions instead in Greek and in French, if they require, basically, they just have to drop me an email or send me a line, and I will send you an Excel file with some basic sentences to be translated in the language, so that I can copy and paste it into the new version, and they can also have it in their languages. So basically, if it's someone else, let's say another country, German country, I don't know, someone from Germany needs it, for example, it's no problem. They just have to translate a rather long Excel file, but they can have it. It's just so it's open. It's no problem, really.
So that's really good to hear, because I mean, I'm not sure if you are aware, but within the Efficient Buildings project, we want to do some city partnerships with cities from the south shore of the Mediterranean Sea, because they are facing same challenges as we on the North Shore. And then we have quite a number of local authorities over there who are more French speaking than English. So they might be interested in the French version. And is there any other adaptation to be done, or climate issues, or?
Well, that obviously that's on the technical side. Some things, yes, they need to be changed, because obviously originally it depends on the geographical position. So, but these are like minor kind of adaptations. Obviously, this could be needed, but it's not that complicated. I mean.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not sure. I haven't seen no hands up, but maybe somebody is encouraged enough. Ask an additional question. I know it's really definitely very hard after 1.5 hour of intensive listening to ask some questions. But yes, still feel free to ask. Okay, I think obviously this is not the case. So yeah, there's still the option to send questions by email around, and then I'm sure that you get an answer from Stefano. This is certainly not a problem. And I'm sure that SISMA is also organizing SISMA Plus future events, where you still have the opportunity to meet the colleagues from the project. But I really encourage you to make use of the tool, to download, to test it, and maybe then you have some questions. So really feel free, because it's the aim of the Efficient Buildings project is to promote these tools which have been developed and which we think they are useful for your work, for your daily business and your local authority. So it would be a pity that we don't make use of these tools where there's much of money and brain inside, basically brain. And yeah, I've seen from your presentation that with your whole enthusiasm that you are working on the project. And yeah, it's also helpful for our work from the Efficient Buildings community. First, we do the promotion of the tools itself, but also we do a lot of political work around. So we do promote or we are lobbying the other part, which is subsidies. So we have, you know, the new Interact Med program, which will start next year. And there's a whole new financial framework in the EU. So we have a new project at EU level, which is Horizon Europe and LIFE, which are completely revised. But there's still also the ELENA program ongoing. So which is also, we've seen from Golea that they make already use of it. So I also encourage you to make use of this program for financing and getting additional money for your projects. And there's also a program, additional program for making projects bankable, which is the European City Facility, which gives smaller amounts, but so it's more interesting for smaller local authorities all over Europe. So let's come to an end. So please go again for the questionnaire. And yeah, I also would like to promote our very last capacity building workshop tomorrow, which is not that technical. It's more on awareness raising. So it's dedicated to tools which have been developed for schools and more orientated to students. So enjoy this last one, enjoy today, and I look forward to meet as many as possible of you in the next year's events we are organizing. So we hope that we can really have an in-person meeting, an in-person conference next year with efficient buildings. So thanks a lot and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.